Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, we've got the useless Joe Hogan.
I am really feeling pretty useless today.
I, listen. All right, we had a topic that we were gonna bring, and then it's just like I don't know. I wasn't feeling it this morning, and it's one that like we've been talking about doing for a while, and I really like. I don't want to half-ass it, right? Like I want to when we get into it, I want to really get into it. But when I started putting together the list of things that we were going to talk, I was like, I can't for the life of me remember all of the things that I'm annoyed about with this topic. So I'm not going to be able to talk on it particularly well. So I called an audible and said, let's figure out something else. And so Joe and I have been sitting here for the last probably 15 minutes almost, trying to figure out a different topic. And the topic that we have to talk about is that there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to
All we
talk
need
about
to
right now,
do
you guys.
is find the right tangent for you, and then that's it. We're gonna fill that
Oh, hey,
45
listen.
to 60 minutes, no
It,
problem.
yeah, it's not
We just need to find the right nugget to set you off.
it's not that I can't talk about Star Wars for an hour unprompted with no topic. It's just that we're going in blind. We've got
Yeah,
the blast shield down and we're
yeah.
just going by feel right now. Um yeah, listen, I I I don't want to be negative, especially about Star Wars right now, because like the world is an absolute trash fire and it's getting worse quite literally every day. That's kind of the point. That's kind of the whole their whole aim right now is to just shock and awe and distract you with all of the atrocities all at once. To paraphrase Andor, heads up, we're going to be doing an Andor recap. It's going to be like a lightning speed season one Andor recap. We're gonna go. It'll be 4 episodes, and we're gonna cover 3 episodes each. But um, in the lead up to Star Wars Celebration, and then Andor season two. But I I have a problem. I have a it's a fairly sizable problem right now, and that is that like I am being forced by Disney and Lucasfilm through their decision making process question mark to become one of those people on the internet that is like, what is Kathleen Kennedy doing? And like I hate it because I want to support Kathleen Kennedy. I want to support Lucasfilm. And I truly believe that the creatives that work for that company are doing their best.
Mm.
But it really, really feels like some force is essentially just like stopping them from producing anything meaningful. Um, yeah, I don't. I'm. I
Producing
don't.
anything meaningful? I don't know if I would take it that far.
I think so. This is the thing, Joe. Is that like the stuff that we got this last year? Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Bad Batch season 3,
Tales of
Star
the
Wars
Empire.
Outlaws. That's all stuff that was in the production pipeline a while ago, right?
Sure.
Like this is all stuff that they've been making since before this weird turn that Lucasfilm has taken in the last 18 months. Um but then going into this year, like we've got Andor, which again, if you really consider the fact that Andor season 2 should have been out last year, was delayed by the writers' strike, right? Like
Mm.
that's what happened there. That's why we don't have it yet.
Skeleton Crew
Um,
also.
Skeleton Crew also. Like a lot of this stuff got pushed out and delayed. But when you look at the docket of what's coming next, it's empty.
It's strange. I don't know that, but like what we know about is empty. I don't necessarily think that like. I mean, celebration is so close, right?
Yeah.
I imagine if by April we're still feeling this way, then I'm gonna start to get nervous. Right now, it's just like we've eaten so well
Yeah.
over the past few years, and like there were years where stuff just kept coming. And I mean, don't forget it was what were we watching when it was? I think it was Andor season 1, right? Wasn't there some overlap between Andor and Bad Batch at the same time at one point? Like we
Uh,
were there was definitely Bad Batch
yeah.
at some point overlapped with another Star Wars show.
With Mando.
Was it
With
Manda?
Mando,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Um like I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't plenty of validity to what you're
Mhm.
saying. I'm
Mhm.
just saying like we've gotten so used to there being so much Star Wars. I don't think that that means that just because, whatever COVID stuff messed stuff up, moving down the pipeline, writer strike stuff, messing stuff up, going down the pipeline. I don't know. Um, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying like I also don't think it's a big deal. You know what I mean? Like it's okay that we have downtime from
Yeah.
stuff and like don't always know exactly what's going to come. I don't think that that means nothing good is going to come sooner than we think. Because how many times have they almost shadow dropped things like um you know no, that's a bad example. I feel like there's been one or two shows that like they announced and then within less than a year we had it. Um
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has happened. I think the thing that has me feeling so differently right now is two of the things that I think we've talked about a lot. Um, the the apparent catering to the part of the fan base that they
the
feel like
chuds.
they've lost,
The
right?
chuds.
Yeah, so there's that component of it with like all of the like with Imperial March and the Columbia Darth Vader collection and like everything within the last year having been targeted at a very specific demographic of Star Wars fans. The fact
Mm,
that like if I walk into a Hot Topic, Old Navy, Gap, places I'm used to seeing Star Wars shirts on the shelves, they either have one, maybe two choices. Definitely it has Darth Vader on it, and or they just literally have nothing. They just literally have
mm.
nothing at the moment. It is probably black. It is probably a reused piece of uh, promotional photography or art. They are not producing anything new. When I was at Disneyland in August last year, um, it was like what they had was not great, and they didn't have really a lot to choose from. So I just there's this thing where like they're like Disney is kind of complaining about how Star Wars isn't really like bringing in numbers at the moment, and yet like what are you guys doing, right? Like what's out there for us to even be excited about as fans? What is there for us to like there's no merch, there's no right, like they just kind of keep doing these same tired integrations and stuff. The other thing right now that I think has me really skeptical of their decision making process um is the news that we got this week about the Acolyte, which is that it was
It did great. It was
the
like the second
second
most, right?
highest
Yeah.
show on Disney Plus in 2024.
Mm.
2.7 million or something like that. Million, yeah. Viewers or whatever, like which by today's numbers is like ridiculously good. It is second behind Percy Jackson, which they treat Percy Jackson like it's a runaway success, right? And it's like, and we're talking about like, yeah, a few 100,000 viewers off. It's crazy. You've just sent me the image, which I had forgotten about until you just sent it, of this Destiny 2 integration that they're doing. Who's still playing Destiny 2, by the way? Like nobody's playing Destiny 2. What's going on? But hey, guess what? There's Star Wars skins coming.
And
Like
they're all go Empire.
yeah,
The
like, oh, are you gonna put in some cool like Jedi theme? No, oh, no, nothing. Just Just a
Just
Crimson
Empire.
Guard, a
Just
Stormtrooper, a
Empire.
Death Trooper, and a
Just
TIE
Empire.
Fighter.
Just
Sure.
Empire. Only
Yeah.
Empire. Only the Empire is cool.
Yeah. Although is that a Ghost Death Star? Is that what that is? I'm looking. I
I don't
like.
know. I don't. I played
Oh, it
Destiny for
totally
about 10
is.
minutes.
Oh, it totally is. That's rad. Like this is the thing. This is the thing that's really frustrating about it is that like I look at these and it's like, well, these are great designs. Like these are awesome. This
Yeah,
is
they're
this
fun.
this
They're
is
cool.
really cool stuff. It'd be rad if there were also Clone Trooper and Jedi ones,
Yeah.
right?
I might actually play some Destiny 2 if there were clone trooper ones.
Yeah, like but this is what they're doing lately is that they just keep putting and listen. I don't want to be hyperbolic. I don't want to fearmonger. I don't know how else to look at this. The color scheme of the Empire, and this is partly the fault of the production design in the sequel trilogy with the First Order. Now, it's on purpose, right? Like it's on purpose, and that was supposed to. They were trying to make a point. They were trying to make a point with the black, white, and red, right? They were trying to make a point with that First Order logo. They did it as close as they could to blending the 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 imperial cog, right, that we know, that we recognize, with something that felt like it was Nazi propaganda.
Mm.
They worked really hard to find the balance on that, and I think they did. And I think that Donald Gleason's performance is very, very pointed and very clear. It's super on the nose in the best way possible. He is doing a Hitler impression in that speech, right? It's supposed to, like, it's not satire because we're not doing this for jokes. It's not for a laugh, but it is satirical in the sense that like it's supposed to be biting, right? This shit is not biting. There's nothing satirical about it. There's no point being made here. They just keep releasing literal imperial propaganda as product integrations with Star Wars. I am a branding consultant. That is like that is primarily what pays my bills right now. So I am very confident in saying that I know what I'm talking about with this stuff. Somebody somewhere came up with this idea and has been pushing this as their brand motivation, as like this undercurrent narrative of like just keep putting out stormtroopers, Darth Vader, Death Troopers, Crimson Guards, TIE Fighters. Just keep putting this stuff out. Put it out across all these different things. Fortnite, Destiny, Columbia, every one of our partnerships, they come to us. This is what we're going to give them. This is what we're going to give them right now because what we want out there right now is basically imperial propaganda because whatever firm they hired to do this, because I don't think that this came from internal within Lucasfilm. It either came from Disney or it came from an external firm. And that like there's an initiative here. They are trying to get back a certain segment of the audience. They're trying to get back a certain type of person that maybe I used to host a podcast with, right? Like they like that's who they're going after, and this is the sort of shit that they've cooked up that they think is going to work, right? So am I saying that Lucasfilm are a bunch of secret Nazis? No, I far from it, right? As a matter of fact, I bet you anything that there are probably people within Lucasfilm that are also grumpy about this in the way that I am. Like, I'm not stopping. I'm not saying like boycott Lucasfilm, boycott
Mm.
Disney, don't buy Star Wars stuff. I'm just saying like be aware that there's something connecting all of this. Like once like one instance is nothing, twice is a coincidence, three times is a pattern. Consistently for the last probably at this point 18 months, right? With this imperialist propaganda bullshit that they've been putting out. That is a concerted effort. Like that's a marketing plan. Somebody somewhere wrote this down. I don't know that anybody wrote down why they're doing it. I think that that's probably something that only happens sort of before and after the meeting, right? And anybody who's worked in marketing knows that that's when the decisions actually get made. They don't get made in the meeting. You have a conversation with an executive before or after the marketing meeting, and that's when the actual decision was made. And then the meeting is usually about getting everybody else in the team on board.
Mm,
That's what those meetings are for. And so that's the stuff that goes on the record, and that's like, and so it's like, hey, don't say that this is what we're doing, but this is what we're doing, right? So somewhere there is a marketing initiative, somewhere that's what's happening. I And it's motivated by the same thing that motivates them saying that the Acolyte was a failure when the Acolyte was clearly critically well received, as well as like the most watched Star Wars thing in 2024,
mm.
right? Actually, I don't know if that's true. Maybe more people are watching old episodes of the Clone Wars or Mandalorian or something like that. I don't know, because they don't give us full stats on that stuff. So maybe there's larger numbers on that. I highly doubt it. Like, I highly doubt that there's 3 million people tuning in to watch the Clone Wars, 4 years after it concluded. I'm sure that there are a lot of people going back and watching Clone Wars and Rebels.
Me. It's
Yeah,
me. I'm
yeah,
the
it's
one driving the numbers up. It's just me.
it's just you. But all of this is motivated by something really simple, because people have been having this conversation, and I keep reiterating this online. I keep trying to hammer this home, because people are like flabbergasted, right? They're like, I don't understand, if it's the second most viewed show on Disney Plus, why would they cancel it? Is because viewership doesn't mean anything to these companies. That is not what they're motivated by. And then the person will respond with like, so like, but they want to get subscribers up on the platform. So yes, they absolutely do want to get subscribers up on the platform, but that's not why they made the decision that they made, because that's counterintuitive to those numbers, right? It's like, well, if more people are tuning in to watch this show, then shouldn't you announce another season, and then more people will subscribe so that they can watch season one before season two? Like, that would be a very logical, rational progression. That's what Netflix did with Stranger Things, right? Like, that's that, which is sort of like the high that it feels like everybody is chasing a lot of the time. But this is motivated by something completely outside of the production of these shows, completely outside of the creative decision making process. And it is shareholder value. And it's not unique to Disney, it's not unique to Lucasfilm, it's not even unique to entertainment right now. This is happening across tech. It's happening I in it with like grocery stores. It's happening just across the board since the pandemic, honestly since 2008. And I posted a thought, I guess, on Blue Sky the other day that was like, this was a little bit of like, I don't know if satire is the right way to put it, but it was definitely facetious. And I posted like, guys, I'm starting to think that 9/11 was pretty fucking bad for everything. I I because that's really like when this all starts. If you
Mm,
really, really historically trace everything that we're dealing with right now, everything that's bad in 2025 really goes back to that. It really goes back to that, and the encroachment of, like, the sort of conservative ideology and far right, you know, extremism, Christian nationalism, all of that stuff. It was all kind of like in the background. It's not that it wasn't there. Like, it's always been there. It'll always be there. I don't think you'll ever get rid of it. But because of the nationalism that came about as a result of 9/11, it's been allowed to flourish, as in fact, like, it's been like actively cultivated, right?
mm,
And that, along with that far right, I fascist ideology that's become so prevalent, capitalism just loves it. It loves it, right? Because the ones who are at the top, the ones who are supporting the fascism, because they are the ones in power, so it benefits them the most. They are also capitalists. They are also, right. You can. I mean, it's not just capitalism because you can see it in any instance of a fascist regime taking over, right? Like if that fascist regime is supported by communism, then communism becomes the thing, right? But yeah, it's like it has. I think in the last since the pandemic, it has kicked capitalism into overdrive, and so now these companies really there's like their leadership, their executive and their boards and stuff like that, they are making decisions based on shareholder value. Like that's what it is. And hate campaigns, which Acolyte drew a massive hate campaign, like the biggest one yet that we've seen with Star Wars, and we've seen some pretty awful stuff in the last few years. But like Acolyte drew a massive hate campaign, and hate campaigns are bad for shareholder value. They're very bad for shareholder value. So canceling the Acolyte it sends a signal to those people that they've won. And so the hate campaign dies down, and so it stops eroding shareholder value. And that's why cancel Acolyte. That's why put out stuff that looks like imperial propaganda. Um, and that's what's got me at this point worried about what's coming next,
Mm,
right? Because if that's what's been happening for the last, let's say, 18 months, because it starts before we start seeing things, right? Because it takes 3 to 6 months to roll these things out. Um, the stuff that we don't know about yet, the stuff that's about to be announced at Star Wars Celebration, assuming that there is a lot of stuff that's about to be announced at Star Wars Celebration, it's going to be motivated by these processes. It's going to be like that is going to be the sort of the subtext of what's going on there. Now, that's a very cynical attitude that I've got right now, right? Like I'm like my perspective on this is very cynical, more cynical than I want to be. But it's just looking around at the world and the way that things have been going. It's really hard not to. The hopeful part of me is looking at Star Wars, why it exists in the first place, and the messages that George baked into it from day one, and going like, well, the atmosphere at the moment is perfect for something Star Wars to come along and like disrupt, right? Like
mm,
to come along and overturn the apple cart. Um Andor fits that bill, right? Like Andor is absolutely and I think it's one of the reasons why I'm in the mode right now to like revisit it and give it another chance. I think when we were like scared of the police state and the sort of like the looming threat of it a couple of years ago when Andor was airing, it was like, okay guys, like this is a little bit much, considering where we're at right now. But in 2025, with the police state in full effect, um, it's almost like maybe Andor's teeth aren't sharp enough.
right.
You know what I mean? Like it's like and it's so funny how a couple of years can totally change my attitude towards it. Um, but and really not even a couple years, really only the last few months. But like I don't know. It genre storytelling is the in my opinion the best way to change hearts and minds. But I think that you have to be really clear about what your allegory is pointing at.
Mm,
And I think that one of the problems with Star Wars is that George's allegories were really really abstracted in the original trilogy. It took a lot of him talking about it and many years for people to start to actually connect the dots between the Ewoks and the Viet Cong,
mm,
right? Like I yeah, like you look at it now and it's like, well, this is a very obvious point that was being made. A very obvious point of like you'll never win that war for two reasons, right? You're on foreign territory, so like the native people know that territory better than the invader, right? And then the other aspect of it is that like the empire is not fighting for anything, it's fighting because it's being told to fight, right? Whereas the Ewoks are fighting for their lives. And that's the analogy there, is that like you can't go into these conflicts with that attitude of like, well, we have superior firepower, we have this, we have that, because that will to fight is so much stronger than those weapons. um and yeah, like that's it's we look at it now and it's like it's so obvious, but honestly, I think it at the time people just like completely missed it. And I think because of that, I think because of how sort of not soft those allegories are, I think that those allegories are very strong allegories. I just think that they're like they've just been abstracted a couple levels too many, that people either ignore them or misinterpret. And I like it's a weird thing because like I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, but the the far right, the chuds, the misogynists, these guys, like they don't see themselves as the empire, they see themselves as the good guys. They think that
Mm,
they're Luke Skywalker, right? The reason for that is rugged individualism and Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged and all of that stuff, which like is a whole other topic that I'm not an expert in, so I don't like digging into it is tough. But the Cliff Notes version is that since the 1930s, I the prevalent ideology in America is that like it's American exceptionalism and the rugged individual, right? So you put those two things together, Luke Skywalker, the hero's journey, the American monomyth, like it all fits that bill, because it's like, oh well, Luke is this, he's an everyman, he's just this farm kid from the middle of nowhere, right, from one of those flyover states, that but because he is so exceptional in the way that America is so exceptional, he is able to rise up above his station and become a hero, right? And so like that's the thing that a lot of the problematic ideologies that are out there right now, that's what they're selling,
mm,
right? Is that idea of like, listen, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you deserve to be this, that, whatever, right? Because you are an American, you are exceptional, you are here's one of those things. You're a real American,
mm.
right? You're a real American. What does that mean? I
What is that? What does that mean?
right? Um, it it allows people to, from no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, to place yourself in the shoes of that character. I think it's why so many of those people lean into the original trilogy, have such a hard time with the prequel trilogy, and cannot look at the sequel trilogy,
Mm,
because the sequel trilogy is I think actually like the allegory is very on the nose. As I said, like you look at Donald Gleason's performance, you look at the iconography that they used, especially in The Force Awakens, the stuff that establishes who the First Order are. They are neo-Nazis. That it was like the point of it, and this is where having Lawrence Kasdan write that screenplay, right? I think really comes into it, because Lawrence Kasdan has a very clear opinion on Nazis. A very clear opinion on Nazis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lawrence Kasdan's work, but there's a dude who's probably the most famous Nazi puncher in history, fictional or otherwise, and that character was created by George Lucas but written by Lawrence Kasdan. That's Indiana Jones, right? Like, and yeah, we love nothing more than watching Indy punch a Nazi in the face, or at least, I thought we all agreed on that. It seemed like we were all in agreement.
Right.
So Lawrence Kasdan being like, "Look, the rise of this like far right nationalist extremism in America is becoming a problem. Let's talk about it in this space movie. um, let's frame, how can the empire come back? Like, if the empire is going to come back, how could it come back? And then him looking at it very presciently and going like, well, how are there neo-Nazis in America in at that point in time when he would have been writing that, like 2014, I and then using that as a basis to create the First Order. So I think like it's very difficult for them to look at who's the good guys and who's the bad guys, because it's like, because then you've got like a girl and she's the one who beats them.
Hmm.
um a girl and a couple of minorities, like, just like, I although the chuds don't recognize that Oscar Isaac is not white. They look
Right.
at him and they think that he's a white guy, because they just want to believe that white is the best. It's like they have some sort of like a belief system about some sort of supremacy to do with white people. That I don't know, I can't really put my finger on it, but um yeah, like, so like they can't look at that stuff. They cannot look at the sequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy, I think, is likewise very difficult for conservatives to get behind, because where George was maybe not as on the nose with the original trilogy as he could have been, he is perhaps sometimes too on the nose with the prequels. Um
Good old Darth Icky in Force Unleashed. That almost happened.
I Yeah, and the allegories at play there in reference to, Bush and Cheney and all of that, and the way that he has talked about that in recent years, of like, no, this is like, no, people are not reading into it. It's the text. It's not even the subtext. It's the text. Um, yeah, government overreach and, like, I can't, like when you get into Revenge of the Sith, post 9/11 war on terror stuff, right? I George, once he told us where this was going to go. He told us where, like, at that time he was smart enough to look at it and go, unchecked, this is what's going to happen. Um and it's like, I don't know, it's so frustrating right now to be living through it, to be a Star Wars fan, and to watch. How many times can we post a GIF of Padme saying like, "This
Thunderous
is how
applause.
Liberty died"? Like, how many
I've
times? Because
seen
like,
it
it's
so
this is
many
like,
times.
nobody's posting it anymore.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that like nobody's posting it anymore, because like it's already done. Like, the Empire has won. Um, like, we are living in that era. The Clone War is over. We lost. I yeah, they're actively working on their Jedi extermination campaigns. It's all of this stuff that's been happening in the last, let me just check my watch, week and a half. um
This week has
I
been the longest 4 years of my life,
Oh
man.
my god, dude. Like, let me take a real quick opportunity, actually, in the midst of this, to just say that, like, I did this on Off the Record as well. ThunderQuack is a safe place. I that is my intention. It has always been my intention. If there's ever anything, in this community, on one of our podcasts, and anybody, that works with our podcasts, that makes you feel otherwise, please communicate it to me, and I'll sort it out. Um, I
Especially Carl.
especially Carl. Oh my god, he's just like, you know what? He's on the razor's edge. No, that's we say that because Carl couldn't be further from like Carl is the best of us. No. I don't want anybody to misconstrue.
No,
Carl is a
no,
wonderful
no.
human being.
Carl's the
His
best.
ideologies are very progressive, and he's an ally through and through. I but yeah, ThunderQuack is inclusive and it's for everybody. And um, the only thing we don't tolerate is intolerance. So I just give me a heads up. If I say anything, if I do anything, if anybody else says or does anything that's counter to that goal, I let me know. But that's I don't mission is like such a weird thing to say, but like that
It's true
is
though.
it's the purpose,
It's
right?
true.
Like I just want like people to be able to have fun and talk about geeky stuff. It's really hard to have fun right now though, because people
No.
are being like actively persecuted, and then other people are acting like it's not a real thing and it's not actually happening, and telling you to like chill out, and not be so sensitive about it. But
Which,
like,
by the way,
yeah,
typically when someone tells you you're too sensitive, that's an abusive tactic, right? Like that's literally
yeah,
a
yeah,
hallmark of abuse.
um, yeah. And I don't think that there's an ability to be too sensitive right now. I think that everybody is a raw nerve to begin with. Um, and the things that are happening are like real attacks. Like these are real attacks on real human beings. um Violence is not just physical violence is also perpetrated with like, thought and rhetoric, and that violence is happening like on a daily basis. Like we are we are living through the stuff that Andor was talking about, like that show was talking about. And we are living through the things that George wrote into the prequel trilogy. And it's I don't know, it's so difficult to approach. Big numbers don't make sense to human beings. Our brains aren't wired to compute large numbers.
Mm.
We we think of things, even large numbers we think of it as small numbers. So like when you look at, as a human being, when you look at a tree, you don't look at it and go, there are thousands of leaves on that tree. You look at it and you go, that is a tree, that is one tree, right? You don't look at a pine tree and go, there's a billion pine needles. Right? Like you look at it and you go, there's a tree with pine needles on it, right? It's a singular thing.
Mm.
We have this tendency to just like want to reduce things. And it's because like our brains were developed to go to assess threat, right? There are three lions. Right? Like we need to, that's what we need to know. We don't need to know that there are a million blades of grass. That's not a threat. There are three lions. That's the threat. And so we're you know, as much as we are predators, we still have, rat brain, that makes us react as prey a lot of the time. And so I like this, like the stuff that's going on, like the hitting us with like 10,000 things all at once. The um I Rounding up one person unjustly is something that we can fight against. Hitting us with hundreds of people at a time, thousands of people at a time, it's like it's impossible for us to to really think about. And this is all related into Star Wars, because this is literally in Andor, right? Like what's the character's name? The kid. Um, like he expresses this to Cassian at one point.
Oh,
He's like
yeah. Oh, I
this
just
is
heard it like a day ago too.
right.
Who
I know,
who
I've seen
who
it so
dies
many
during the
times.
heist, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Oh, I can't
it's
believe
his
it.
manifesto, right? Like
Yeah,
his
yeah.
manifesto is the basis of the rebellion. Um, it's and I mean like it should be the basis of ours as well. But I he essentially says what I'm saying, which is like this idea of like this like that's how they're gonna get away with it. Like that's how they continue to get away with it. If they silence one person, like we notice, but if they silence a whole group at once, it's too big to do anything about. And the ship is so big that like it takes so long to move, and it takes so many people in such a concerted effort to turn that I it feels impossible, right? That's all, and that's like the whole point right now is for it to feel that way. And they're just like they're they're targeting vulnerable people, and they're targeting these groups that they've been vilifying for the last like decade, really. I and just like amping up that rhetoric, and it's just like the literal parallels to Star Wars are they're so it's so close that it makes what they're doing feel trivial. Like it makes it
Mm,
like when you talk to people about it, because we've seen it in fiction, and because we've seen it in historical fiction, so like so many of us are a generation or more removed from World War II, that like that's not real. That's a thing in Indiana Jones movies. It's a thing in, Steven Spielberg likes to talk about it a lot in his movies. It's a subject matter, right? It's not a real thing that happened. Now there are still some people who lived through it, that are out there, and they are screaming at the top of their lungs, "Not again, please." But like I think because it's so close to something like what happens in Star Wars, it almost makes it seem cartoonish in reality. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's easy for them to pull it off right now, is that like yeah, like there it's like we're all just like constantly being told by other people that don't want to get involved in stuff, that don't want to fight, right, that don't want to like resist, that are they're just like I think that you're being reactionary.
mm.
Right, like, oh, it's not that bad, and it's like I don't know, the things that happened within the last 24 hours are that bad. They are that bad. There are a lot of things right now that have me like genuinely fearful for people that I care about. And I yeah, like if you know a teacher in the United States right now, like there's very good reason to be scared, because they didn't pass a law. Nobody passed a law. He signed an executive order basically saying that they can like just round people up because trans people are anti-American. Like what? Like crazy. It's insane. And this is the sort of stuff that's like in Star Wars, right? It's in our fiction. It's in our genre storytelling as like it's supposed to be there as warning signs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's supposed to be there as like a cautionary tale of like this is what happens when you let the wrong people have too much power. But I feel like what it feels like what has happened is that a lot of those people have taken that fiction. They've taken Orwell, and they've taken George Lucas, and they've taken like man, they've taken like Frank Herbert, like they've taken Dune, which is as like extreme, ridiculous, fantastical, fascist story, characters and stuff like that. They've taken that stuff and they're going like, I think we could do this for real though. Like I think we could do this for real. And yeah, man, it's I don't know. I don't know. I'm in the weeds now and I don't know how to get out. Like I'm trying to I don't
Yeah.
know if you
No,
guys can
I'm
tell.
I'm with you, man.
Like I've got the machete and I'm trying to bushwhack us out of this, but it's almost like this is probably why we're having so much trouble figuring out a topic right now. I think it's also why Lucasfilm is just silent at the moment. They're just silent. And my fear is that a source of inspiration a source of community, a rallying cry for decent people. The reason why I have the Rebel logo tattooed on my fucking arm, right? I'm really worried that because Lucasfilm is no longer George Lucas and is now part of Disney, copyright, trademark, registered, blah blah blah, LLC, LTD, well, whatever their fucking legal shit is, right? It's because it's part of a corporate machine. The edict right now is like, heads down,
Mm,
don't. Star Wars is built on anti-authoritarianism, and authoritarianism is the flavor of the day. So yeah, like, don't draw their attention right now. It's it feels like compliance. I think like that's, man, oh boy. I hate that I am saying this stuff. I really, really hate that I'm saying this stuff. But if you look at what's going on right now, you look at all of the people who mere months ago were campaigning against this administration becoming a reality and saying we cannot, like, we simply cannot accept it. Those people are now complicit.
mm,
Those people are silent at the moment. They are carrying on with business as usual. They are collaborating in the worst instances and cooperating in the best. And that's a very thin line between those two things, right? Um, and so silence is compliance. Like, it absolutely is in the face of like fascist authoritarianism. Like not speaking up, not saying something. I have a fucking ridiculous amount of privilege because I am in a different country at the moment. So Joe, I hope this doesn't this doesn't reflect poorly on you.
me too.
Um, I but I hopefully we're small enough that we don't get noticed. Um, and that we're just, you know, part of the undercurrent of the conversation that's going on. But I, yeah, like, I want to believe that good people are doing good things and I'm just not seeing it. But at the moment, it's really, really hard to believe that. It's
Mm,
really hard. I mean, like, I do believe that there are good people and they are doing good things that I'm just not seeing. But that, like, in an instance like this with a company like Lucasfilm and with Star Wars, that kind of, when we need these stories more than ever, um, all we're getting from them right now are stormtrooper skins in Destiny.
mm.
You know,
I hear you.
because like, yeah, because like fuck, I love Skeleton Crew.
Mm,
I love it so much. And Skeleton Crew is anti-capitalist, right? Like, it's absolutely anti-capitalist. There's a very clear theme going on in that story. And and the pirates are not necessarily bad guys. I wish that they had stuck the landing a little bit more on that. Like, I really wish that we had gotten a little bit more of a good pirate versus bad pirate, like I was expecting. It's entirely possible that there's more story that they intend to tell, and that's why that hasn't quite come through yet. But um, yeah, it was great, and I loved it, and we had a lot of fun with it. Um, I, I Andor season 2 is right around the corner. Let's hope that we all make it that far. Let's hope that watching a show about space wizards that has no space wizards in it. But regardless, it's not important right now, Mike. I um yeah, let's hope that we're all still in a space where watching, escapism, I is something that we have the luxury of doing. I don't know. They're moving so fast, dude. Like it's all moving so fast. I it's yeah, it's terrifying, and I wish that there were more companies. There are a few. Go buy Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I like yeah. I get it at Costco, I think. Although Costco with the union busting is a little bit on
Mm.
my shit list at the moment, but other stuff they're pretty good. Everybody dropping all their DEI initiatives and stuff like that. It's just it's
Target,
all
yeah.
it's all so that when I say compliance, that's what I'm talking about, right? They haven't been it hasn't been outlawed, right? Like the executive orders and stuff that have gone out, most of them are just about like sort of government position on these things. So those companies dropping their DEI initiatives, they're obeying in advance, right? And that's the kind of compliance that I'm talking about. And that's where like that stuff is really easy to see when those companies remove those things from their websites. It's very easy for us to track that. When Lucasfilm doesn't put out more Bad Batch, that's harder to see
Yeah.
because that happened. That was a year ago that show ended abruptly and really without an ending, right? Very clearly cut short. Very clearly cut short. And right now at 10:39 a.m. on January 30th, 2025, I just connected those dots because the whole thing with Bad Batch was that it was them trying to survive under this authoritarian regime. Like it was just like Andor. I Yeah, and I don't think they can do anything about Andor. Season 2 has to come out, but I mean it doesn't, but it does. I don't know. We'll see. I But Bad Batch, I think they were able to go like, let's stop this one.
Yeah.
Let's stop this one. Um, yeah, like this, like that's where I say like this. They're not producing anything meaningful. I think the Mando and Grogu movie is gonna be popcorn fare at best. I have very very low expectations for that film because using the word film to refer to it, I think is going to be generous. Um,
Damn.
I think it's going to be a commercial. Like I honestly do. I don't. I the it just I sound like Star Wars theory in a way, but I want everybody to know that I am coming at this from the opposite side of it. Where like the last few years, creatives at Lucasfilm, the people who've been given a shot, the people who've been given the opportunity to tell stories, have taken that and told some incredible stories, inspiring stuff, right? Acolyte, Andor, Bad Batch season 1 and 2. I even going back to Star Wars Rebels, even Resistance in its own way did this stuff. Um,
And you lost me.
but like the way that stuff has been received, the way that Disney and Lucasfilm have backed down from those fights, I, I, yeah, it, it bums me out. It bums me out to continually having to defend this thing that I love so much from both sides.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because like,
yeah.
because you've
Yeah.
got the chuds coming up and they're saying like, oh, this is too woke, yada yada yada, and then you've got the like leftists, of which I consider myself a leftist, um, socialist for sure, uh, saying, oh, they're not doing enough, right? Oh, this isn't they need to, we shouldn't watch it because this person is involved with it, or because this, like, they didn't say this one thing right, or they didn't. And it's like, well, I think that you guys are throwing out the baby with the bathwater a little bit, right? Like, it's the point
I mean, that's
being,
what happened, in my opinion, with the election.
yeah, yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, well, this is what happened with the election. It's what's going to happen up here in Canada if they're not smart about it as well. Which I feel like maybe they're moving in the direction of, like, understanding that this is what happened in the States and happened in the UK as well. Um, you're not going to convince somebody not to vote for someone. I like the problem is that the message was, you cannot vote for Trump. Trump cannot be allowed back into power, right? Like,
Mm.
that was the tone, that was the message, that was the conversation. And you can't convince people that way to change their vote. You have to give them something else to vote for, right? Like, you have to speak to them on a level of, like, the thing is that these conservatives, they're lying, they are liars, they are con men, like, they are swindlers. It's all bullshit. But they got there on these false promises of, like, well, if you make me student body president, it'll be pizza day every day, no more homework, right? Like, that's which, like,
Oh man, that's the perfect analogy.
but it fucking works, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, that's the thing, is that it
yeah.
works.
Wow,
And that's
wow,
what they
that's
did.
wild.
And then you've got grown-ups on the other side saying, hey, he's lying, that's not real. And instead of saying uh, it's tough, because there's a tightrope to walk here, because you also can't turn around and go, like,
Yeah.
here's our comprehensive 36-point plan on how we're going to improve the economy over the next 5 years. Like that, like, people don't want to hear that shit either. What they want to hear is, in the first 90 days, if you elect me, I am going to make sure that blah blah blah. Doesn't matter what it is. It
Mm.
really doesn't matter what it is, right? Like pick one of the 15 things that people are worried about right now, right? Like I truly believe, if you ran on a platform and your basis was, I mean, like, it worked for Obama, because I the Affordable Care Act is basically what got him his second term, right? Like that is what that was. And that was like, hey, like, our healthcare system is broken. You guys cannot afford to live. If you elect me, like, I'm going to make sure that this goes through. I'm going to make sure that this happens and that it's a real thing. And you're going to be covered. You're gonna have medical insurance, right? Like, so I think that, it actually would have been a very, very smart move. Instead of all of the stuff that they talked about with Harrison Walls, it would have been much smarter if they would have just had, like, three things that they ran on, and one of them should have been minimum wage, should have been
Mm.
federal minimum wage. I'll sign an executive order and I will make the federal minimum wage $15. I'll do it on day one, promise. Like, swear. You want to talk to Gen Z, so you would say bet, right? Like, that's how you would say that. Hello, fellow kids, I can do it too. Yeah, like that's I like that's how you do it, right?
Mm.
You're not going to get there. You're not going to get there the way that they've been trying to get there, which is by saying, like, don't you see how ridiculous he is? And then people going, like, twofold. Some of them going, like, yeah, that's kind of why we like him. And then other people being like, that's not the point. The point is eggs, the
Yeah.
price of eggs, which, by the way, have doubled.
Oh yeah.
Just heads up. Yeah, if that's why you voted for him. No one listening to this podcast
No,
voted for
they
Trump.
don't. They don't care.
I don't like. I have done a very good job of alienating that part of the audience, to our detriment. I think because yeah, our listenership is not what it used to be back in the day. Because I think every time that I talk like this, I we lose a couple more people. Um,
It's all right.
it sucks. It sucks because like, and I kind of talked a little bit about this on ThunderQuack, and I'll talk about it here in the context of Star Wars. It's like I don't think that we're gonna pull out of this by continuing to like be divisive and separate.
Mm,
It's tough. It's very tough because at the same time, it's like there are certain people that won't be invited back to ThunderQuack, and like I have to kind of stand on that. But at the same time, like, how do we have a conversation if everybody is just siloed off into their echo chamber
no.
and um we can't actually like come together on stuff, right? I it is one of the goals of the people in power right now that they want us separated. They don't want us together. They don't want us to be in unions. They don't want us to have community. They've all but destroyed the concept of a third space, right? It used to be there used to be coffee shops, there used to be community centers, libraries, churches, all of that stuff. And they just keep taking those things away, making it harder and harder, right? And because it doesn't benefit capitalism for us to have community, for us to come together and help one another, right?
Mm.
Do you remember like a few years ago, community gardens used to be a big thing? It used to be like,
Community gardens? I don't know that I've ever
oh really?
had
Like
that on
yeah,
my
the idea
radar.
of like a like in urban centers and stuff like that of like taking over a piece of land and using it as a community garden where like everybody worked together and was responsible for, like you come in, you grab your plot and nobody's paying for any of it, right? Like it's just like a free access sort of thing. um and yeah, you grow vegetables and stuff like that,
No,
right?
that's sweet.
But like they don't want us doing stuff like that, because when we do stuff like that, it then we don't need to rely on grocery stores.
Mm.
Right? When we rely on each other and we have community, then like it's I think we need to find ways of being able to come back together over shared interests, things like Star Wars, and rebuild community so that those people who feel like they're lost, because there's a lot of them, don't end up in the wrong club and then going down the rabbit hole of a dangerous ideology. Because like that's what's happened, right?
Mm.
And I think the pandemic made it that much worse. I think it we all got real comfy just sitting at home. um yeah, I don't know, maybe the fact that there's no Star Wars and Marvel stuff coming in the next year is a good thing, because like let's not be attached to our streaming services and our and social media. It's yeah, I don't know, I've always been such a proponent for these things, right? Like I've always felt that like I said earlier, like I think that genre storytelling is the most effective way to to change someone's opinion on something, to change someone's ideology. Maybe the only other thing that's more effective than genre storytelling is religion, which I just look at as a type of genre storytelling. Um, that'll piss somebody off. Oh boy. I but at the same time, it's like I feel like a lot of this stuff we just use as like confirmation bias these days, right? We're all just so entrenched in our own ideologies, and we just want to like like this is my belief structure, and if you don't agree with it, then kick rocks, and like that's sort of the attitude. Um, and I think it's become like really dangerous because it's been weaponized against us, right? Like separating us and polarizing us is what's allowed literal Nazis. I can't believe I am even saying that, but like literal Nazis to rise to the highest positions
Mm.
in the most influential country in the world. I don't want to say powerful anymore because I don't know
Yeah.
what that means, but certainly like the most influential country because the as the press is really fond of saying right now, when America sneezes, everybody else catches a cold. Um, and that used to be an economic term, but I think that it's it's becoming really clear that it also applies to political ideology
Mm.
and therefore everything. Um, and yeah, I
Are
don't know.
are you seeing a lot of that in Canada? Like, are you seeing a lot of?
Oh yeah, the numbers have been polling for a long time in favor of the Conservative Party of Canada, which is currently run by a man named Pierre Poilievre, who is a shit weasel, I think is the technical term.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all you got to do is look at this dude's face, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that dude's up to no good. Um, he was asked last week in response to that first volley of fucking uh, vomit rhetoric that came out of the Trump administration, right? You know, in that first 24 hours,
Mm.
um, I whether or not he believes trans people exist. Very like literally point blank asked that question, and he was like I don't know what you're talking about. That was his response, right? He was like I don't understand your question. Like he just feigned confusion,
Yeah.
and it's very clear of like he doesn't want to answer one way or another, and then he does go on to say like basically, you know, he believes that that there are two genders, that it's man and woman or whatever. He doesn't know. I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, so he is another one. I mean, like he's been endorsed by both Trump and Elon Musk. So that tells you everything that
Great.
you need to
All
know
right.
about what type of a
I now
garbage
understand.
person he is. Yeah. And so it's been projected that they will win later this year when a federal election is called. Um, we were close to a federal election anyways, but then our prime minister stepped down, and because our prime minister stepped down,
Mm.
it sort of like it sets into motion a bunch of procedures that essentially call for a federal election. It's we do things so differently up here. So like we don't elect a person. We elect our members of parliament, and then our members of parliament form a government, and when they form a government, their leader becomes the prime minister.
Okay.
That's as simple as I can put it. Is that like so? Whoever has the majority, although it doesn't necessarily need to be a majority because we don't have a two-party system. We have technically four main parties, five, I guess, really. Um, I one of those parties is literally like a separatist party, but anyways, the Bloc Québécois, like it's Quebec, and Quebec doesn't want to be part of Canada. They want to be their own country. um they
That's
still
been
want to
like for decades, right?
Yeah, they still want to benefit from all of the positive relationships and everything like that they have, it being a province and not a country. But yeah, but they desperately want to be their own country. I don't know how strong that sentiment is in 2025, but it is definitely like the foundation of the block. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a funny thing, but that's why I said it's like we have four parties, and it's like, and if you're in if you're in Eastern Canada, then technically there's a fifth one, but like there's no Bloc Québécois in BC. Like we don't care. um, but yeah. Anyways, I yeah. So like because you can end up with and this is sort of the way that it's been the last little while, and that's sort of like the precarious balance that we have in our system. Is we've got a minority government. So what that means is that the liberals have the most seats, but they don't have a majority of the seats, meaning that they don't have more than half, right?
Okay.
So, um, in order for them to form a minority government, they have to essentially have a coalition with one of the other parties, and they do. They have a coalition with they have basically an agreement with the New Democratic Party, the NDP, that they'll cooperate and work together. Uh, and so what that does is that keeps the conservatives from being able to ram their stuff through.
Mm.
Uh, so that like that, but that's how our leader is chosen. Is that it's like the party chooses their leader, and that's sort of who campaigns the most. But at the end of the day, each riding, so like each region, um, within a city, even like because some cities are big enough that they have multiple regions. Like Vancouver has I don't know, like half a dozen at least, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more like 10, because it's a very big city. There's a lot of people. It's and when I say big, I'm talking about human being population numbers, not land mass. Land
Yeah.
doesn't vote,
Okay.
people vote. But I each riding elects a representative, a member of parliament. That member of parliament goes and takes a seat, like picks like has a seat in the parliament, and yeah, whoever sort of has the most seats forms a government, and their leader is the prime minister for that term. So Justin Trudeau has been our prime minister for I don't even know. I've lost count. Over 10 years. I think it's like 11 years. He stepped down as leader of the Liberal Party. So by stepping down as leader of the Liberal Party, that means that the Liberals have no leader currently, which means that there there's no prime minister. Sort of, he is still the prime minister for the foreseeable future, but yeah, it means that they now have to pick a new leader, and when they pick a new leader, that's not who we voted for, more
Mm-hmm.
or less. And so like that pushes a
So the
federal
federal
election,
election. Yeah. Got it.
so that it has to happen so that we can all like agree that we voted for this person. um so yeah, all of that's like a very long answer to your question of like, is it
Yeah,
happening
but
up here?
I now understand what the hell
Yeah,
the deal is. So
hey, it's not your fault. I know how your government works. You don't know how our government works
yeah,
because like
ours
we
don't
learned
care
about
to
yours.
tell about
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
else's.
um uh, as a matter of fact, they actively suppress that information in curriculum, because they don't want you guys to know how it works in other countries, because I as man, a lot of people are really fond of saying you guys aren't technically a democracy, you're a republic. And republics are structured for one purpose, and it's actually imperialism. It's colonialism. It's expansion, which is why you guys fight all those wars everywhere else in the world, and then put bases in other sovereign countries and call it American soil, but don't consider it colonization or expansion. Uh, Even though, for all intents and purposes, once you guys put a bunch of airplanes with bombs there, you have a significant influence on the decision making process of those countries. Anyways,
Yeah, that sounds
I
like stuff that I do.
yeah,
I definitely
I
do that stuff.
it's got like this is the obnoxious thing about all of this, is that it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Like literally, it has nothing to do with us. It's kind of the problem, right? Is that in the year 2025, we have these supposedly representative governments, whether it's a democratic republic like you guys, or a parliament like we have. Most of the countries in the Commonwealth use parliamentary procedure as their way of democratically electing leaders. Um, I say most, probably all. I think all, but I'm not sure on that, so I'll stick with most. But yeah, I mean, like, we're backwards too. We still technically have a king, right? The good thing about that, though, is that, like, yeah, we still do technically have a king, although he has no actual power. They're just purely a figurehead.
What does he even do?
In
What's that
terms of
guy's
Canada,
job?
absolutely nothing.
But I'm saying,
Absolutely
like,
nothing.
what's your day to day? I'm the king
Yeah,
of
what is his
Canada.
day to day?
What's
Just
on
being a
my
rich
docket
person.
today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's the king of England, so it's like, but because we already have a king, I think it's a little bit harder for someone to crown themselves king in the way that the orange felon is intending to do with himself. He hasn't done it yet. He hasn't announced it yet. I think that they're just waiting. I think they got a few more of these executive orders that they're going to
Well,
ram through.
he keeps saying the past week several times, like, "Oh, maybe I'll run for a third time."
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, at least Palpatine like concocted a war and was like, these emergency powers. I'm going to take these emergency powers, and these emergency powers are going to allow me to extend my term limit. Um, whereas Trump is just going like, I'm just going to do it.
yeah,
I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to write an executive order. Um,
subtlety of a sledgehammer.
oh my god. The thing is that, like, the one that came out yesterday that everybody's reacting to this morning, to do with uh like targeting trans youth in schools and teachers that support them, right? Like, it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Like, so it's there's a there's a practice in law, and this is my 12th grade law class that allows me to understand this, and
You
it's
guys had a
it's
law class?
yeah, it's
Jeez.
the best. Is the best. So what that teacher said in the first class is like, you are not here to become lawyers. That is not what this class is. I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know so that when you get yourself into trouble, you know a handful of things that are very important. First and foremost, shut up.
Yeah, do not speak to the police.
Second, you are not a lawyer. Third, get a lawyer. um yeah, but like, one of the foundations of Western law, which comes from England, and then, like, Canadian law is based on, and so is American law. Like, one of the foundational components of it, one of the foundational practices, is that, like, a law really can't supersede another law, right? So you can't make a law that breaks another law. It's you're not supposed to. It doesn't mean that there are not instances. Of course there are, because there are all sorts of corrupt people in positions of power that create all sorts of things, and then they make loopholes, and then people, you know, argue around this stuff, and that's why lawyers have jobs. Because these things have to be argued, because as clear as we try and make it, it ends up murky as hell. But um, your guys' entire country is based on the Constitution, and then a law that circumvents the Constitution really shouldn't
Whoops.
be upheld. Um but the thing is that he's stacked the Supreme Court, so everything's in his favor. Like, it is so laughably the plot of the prequels
Right?
that it's just like all of the things. Yeah, these people who are like, well, but he's the president now. It's like the scenes of Obi-Wan talking to Anakin and being like, are you not suspicious of him? Like, how can you? Why would you trust him? Why? Because he gave you what you want. That's why. Like, it's so simple that it almost like that it's so easy to miss the point,
Mm.
right? Because like that whole scene with Obi-Wan where he's like, where he's right after Anakin is shown up, he's like Palpatine says that I'm on the Jedi Council now, and then they're like, we'll give you a seat, but you're not a master. Like don't like Palpatine doesn't tell us what to do. We're just gonna appease him right now. And then afterwards, Obi-Wan's like, don't you see that you're being manipulated? Like, don't you see that like this is just like he's just appealing to your vanity, to your ego, and like he hasn't given up his power. He's using you to spy on us. But the problem, oh man, just like just like the Democrats, and one of the reasons why they got into such difficult waters and didn't win the election, is that the Jedi Council, instead of confronting Palpatine, turns to Anakin and goes, "We're going to use you to spy on him. We want you to report what he's doing because you're so close to him. So who are you loyal to?" Right? And it's like, well, Palpatine never said that. So the second that the council says to Anakin, "You're going to spy on him and tell us what he's up to because we think that he's up to no good," Anakin's like, "Well, now you guys sound like the bad guys," right? It's like, oh my god,
Whoops.
you guys pay more attention to these movies. Hey, remember when people said that the prequels were poorly written? Remember when that one guy talked in a voice like this and said a lot of stuff about pizza rolls,
Star
and
Wars
so
Episode
everybody,
1, The Phantom Menace. The
yeah,
most
and so
disappointing thing is it's my son.
everybody just went, well, that's funny, so it must be true. It must be correct. Have you revisited those?
It's been a while.
It's been a really long time
It's
since
been a
I have,
while.
and I remember that first one, the Phantom Menace, and I think the thing about the Phantom Menace one is that like there's a lot of really salient points in that one. Like I do actually think that like it really nails why people had a problem with the Phantom Menace.
Mm.
Um, I don't, I still don't agree with it. I don't think it's correct. I just think that it gets at the heart of like why people responded emotionally the way that they did to a lot of
Mm.
it. I think that a lot of people responded emotionally to it because they just like they couldn't handle the idea of what George Lucas wanted to tell us, which was that like Darth Vader was once innocent, just in the way that all of these people who do atrocious things were once innocent, and it's the world that corrupts them. It's power, it's greed, it's other people, like it's abusers, it's all of that stuff, right? They don't want, oh, don't tell me that story. I just want them to be evil from the beginning so that it's clear cut. um Evil is a thing that you're born with, not a thing that can happen to anybody. I anyways, I've always found it interesting that his follow-ups that were created out of a response to the popularity of that first one, the subsequent episode 2 and episode 3 red letter media reviews feel forced. They feel so empty, so hollow, of him just like, I gotta make these because like that's what's gonna get views. That's what's gonna get we're predating views. This is like before YouTube times. These were videos that were hosted on a website. He was looking for hits. He was
Wow,
looking for hits
that's
on his website, guys. Hits are a metric that we used to use that we don't use anymore because the metric was pure nonsense. Because a hit is any interaction with anything on your website. So somebody loads a page. A page is an HTML file, and let's say that HTML file references 5 images, which would have been a very heavy page back in 2003, 2004. Um, that's You're talking about 6 hits. That's 6 hits on one page. Crazy. Hey, did you set up a custom font? Because that's another hit. If you set up a custom font, it's just gonna load into that person's thing. They got to download it. That browser has to access that file. That's how we used to. And then you'd have a hit counter on the bottom of your website, and people would be like, "Whoa, you
oh,
have
the
10
hit
million hits."
counters.
10 million hits on your website. Whoa. And it's like, yeah, well, it's a MP3 file sharing site. People are downloading files off of your site. It's the purpose of it. Anyways, it's not 10 million people. It's 10 million hits. It's a different thing. It's different from a visitor, which is different from a unique visitor. Just FYI for people. The metrics we use these days, like the stuff that Disney Plus is talking about, we're usually talking about unique views, an individual human being. So we're not talking about 2.7 million as a metric for the Acolyte. Tie this all back into where we started with this conversation. Oh boy, 2.7 million viewers is unique individual accounts. So not even individual human beings, because that's very difficult for them to know how many people are in a household who watched the show. They do ask that question a lot. Like you'll get surveys, and those surveys will ask you like who primarily uses Disney Plus, what that's also why we have profiles on Disney Plus, so that they can go like, okay, I watched it and so did Crystal, and so that counts as two unique viewers. Even though we're on the same Disney Plus account, it counts as two people. It's also why one of the reasons why they don't want you sharing your account, beyond the fact that they want everybody to pay for their own account. It also messes up their metrics when you've got a bunch of people using one profile. But yeah, so anyways, that number is actually a lot. It's a lot more real, and it's more realistic than numbers that we used to see for TV shows when we go by Nielsen ratings. And you guys know I've talked about the Nielsen ratings and how bogus they are, and how if you look at those Nielsen ratings, as a matter of fact, this is fantastic, because when we were talking about the Acolyte, we talked a lot about those Nielsen ratings, right? And I talked a lot about how bullshit they were at the time. And this is just confirmation of that. Getting that number of 2.7 million viewers for that show is just confirmation that the Nielsen numbers mean absolutely nothing,
Mm.
because the Nielsen numbers did not correlate to 2.7 million viewers, right? Like if you went by the Nielsen numbers, which all of the grifters were doing at the time, they really loved to quote those Nielsen numbers. Remember that the Nielsen numbers were people, it's an extrapolation based on people who are in the Nielsen ratings program, right? I mean, that's old Nielsen ratings. I guess we're talking about the online stuff with the streaming stuff. So that's based on people who were watching, because Nielsen only has numbers for people who are watching. I like in the like the dedicated app, right? Like on their TV. So if you were watching it on your phone, streamed through a Chromecast, your view didn't count, right? Even though you're watching it on a television set, you weren't watching it through the native Disney Plus app on your TV, on your smart TV, right? So not everybody has a smart TV to begin with, so it's already broken data, and then not everybody uses their smart TV in that way, and a lot of people are watching on platforms like PlayStation or Xbox as their streaming device, right? None of those views count. So I think that we can suffice to say, confirmed by 2.7 million viewers, right, that the vast majority of people are not watching through the metric that Nielsen is tracking, which means that those numbers are bogus. The numbers that we are used to seeing when we talk about ratings from back in the day, that are sort of um, like the benchmark that we're looking at when we go like numbers are so much lower now than they used to be, right? Those numbers were Nielsen ratings, and those were based on people. What I was saying before is like you're in the program, so you work for Nielsen, right? You've been like vetted, and you're in this program. So demographically, that means a certain thing. It means that the data is skewed. It's not representative of everybody. It's representative of people who have bothered to participate in that program, which is going to have an inherent bias. I'm going to go out on a limb and say against poor people, which is then going to be an inherent bias against minorities, specifically African Americans, because we're talking about the United States. So you're skewing everything. Like your data's already completely fucked at that point. Because like to participate in the program, you have to keep like a logbook of the things that you're watching. So then we're also relying on Nielsen families to accurately self-report, which we know scientifically isn't reliable data. Right? It's like eyewitness testimony, right? Like like self-reporting. People always embellish on self-reporting. Always. Right? Like if you're tracking hours for work, let's say, working from home, self-reporting, let's be realistic, 15 minutes of that was you sitting on the toilet.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell
Well,
them that, right?
I'm getting paid
Like
for the hour. I don't care.
yeah, exactly. So
If I was
like
at the office, I would do the same thing. I would go to the bathroom on the clock. Okay.
yeah, of course, right? So like yeah, self-reporting is just reflective of human behavior, not
Mm,
of it's not in and of itself a bad thing. It's just not reliable data is what I'm
mm.
saying. Um so yeah, the numbers that we used to have for, let's say, what used to be considered one of the biggest hit TV shows, right? Two and a Half Men. Stupidly high number. I don't know what it would have been. Probably 7 or 8 million. I'm gonna guess. It might even be higher than that because we're talking about like, at the height of that show. That's before streaming. That's before there were a lot of things to eat into that number. Um, and you go back even further, you go back to like the highest rated shows, like the highest viewed events in television history. You go back to like, well, at a certain point there was only three networks, right? And there's a sweet spot in there of like there's only three main networks. There are like little local stations and stuff like that, but there are three national networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS, right? But everybody's got a TV in their home now, right? Like you hit that point at some point in like the late 60s, early 70s. And so yeah, like you have events that happened, and it's like everybody in America was watching that, everybody, because there wasn't anything else to watch. Right? Some of those things are ridiculous, like the first time we put a person on the moon, if you believe that sort of thing. I do. I believe it. I to make that joke every time. I want. If you're a first time listener, I do. We landed on the moon. There's evidence. You can use a telescope in your backyard and look at the moon and see where we did. So just like, okay, it's it happened. Um, Now, what did we find when we got there? That's where I have some questions. Why haven't we gone back? That's the real, because the moon men don't want us to. I yeah. Um, Also why everything is destroyed on approach to Mars. Like it just, I don't know. Harder to prove.
Wait a minute.
Um,
Wait. Well, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
yeah.
Hold on a minute. The you have. I feel like you're being facetious with the moon men don't want us to.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you actually feel like we haven't gone back?
Oh, because there's no impetus to do it. The Cold War ended.
Okay.
That's why.
Because I was
Like,
like,
that's the
Mike, you
reality.
literally don't believe in
There's nothing. There's
right.
nothing
Like
up
we've had this
there.
discussion already.
Yeah, there's nothing up there that is so
Okay.
valuable that it justifies the expense. Right. The only thing that justified the expense in the '60s was that the Western world was in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, and
Mm,
I yeah, the space race was a thing. It was we can't let them get there first, because if they do, they'll build a laser and they'll attack us with it. So we got to get there first so that we can build a laser. And then
mm.
we got there and found out, this is actually really, really hard. I don't know that we could build a laser here. I don't know that we could use this as a military outpost. There's no reason, and so we just stopped. And then the Cold War ended, and then we really stopped. It was like then we built the International Space Station, so we don't have a reason to go to the moon. It's the ISS is way closer than the moon, by the way. Like it just so people understand, the ISS is in like high Earth orbit as opposed to the moon, which is like I'm gonna just throw a number out there. It's at least like 100 times further away. Like at least it's probably even further than that. You can fit the sun in between the distance between the Earth and the moon, right? Like that's the or is it? I don't know, something like that. I don't know, something big, Jupiter. I don't know, something. But the ISS is not that far away. The ISS you can get to in it within the day. I think it takes 8 hours to launch from launch to dock with the ISS, which it takes days to get there to get to the moon, just to get to orbit in the moon, and then you got to orbit it, and then you got to watch Apollo 13. Okay, I don't have time to explain space to you guys. I Mars, however, has that face on it and pyramids and stuff,
Mm.
and every time we launch something towards Mars, it somehow ends up destroyed, except for like the couple of things that they tell us are sending images back from Mars, but like that could be Utah, you don't know, right? It's who knows. No, that's also mostly being facetious on that one. uh yeah, I would really like us to go back to the moon and to go to Mars. It'd be really cool. At the moment, I really love it if some of the people who've said that they really want to go to Mars, I'd really love it if they would just
Just
try.
we're there instead of here.
I'd love it if they would try. I would love it. I would love it if they would try. I also think that they should look into submarines to go check out the Titanic. So I think that those are smart things for billionaires to spend their money on. I and I support those endeavors more than the things that they're currently spending their money on. You know what I mean? I think everybody
Yeah.
knows what I mean. But yeah, I we've successfully been on a podcast for an hour and
Forced
38 minutes.
perspectives, baby. Star Wars.
I There was some Star Wars correlation in there,
Sprinkled.
but yeah, mostly I got myself put on some lists, I think. Um,
Hopefully, me too.
I Yeah, I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully you are able to just, when stuff gets real spicy in the next couple of months, I I I think it's important for everybody to have a passport
Mm-hmm.
always, all the time. I think it's really important for Americans to have passports right now so that they can more easily travel across, nearby land borders.
Mm.
Although I don't need a passport to travel into the United States. All I need is my driver's license if I'm going by land. It's only by air that I need
Mm. Okay.
to have a passport. But or I don't know, maybe by sea. I've never tried.
Mm.
I but I don't think so. I think by air is the only time that you actually need like a passport, and I think that's again tie it all back into this 9/11 stuff. Um, I I so I don't know if that works the other way around. I don't know if if it's that easy for you guys to travel up here. I would imagine that it probably is. It's probably easier because we're less worried about stuff than you guys are. Because we really only have the American border to worry about, and you guys are so jingoistic that we don't. The illegal immigration components of people coming in from the United States, I don't think is as big of a deal. I think we have other immigration issues in Canada that we worry about. Um, Probably worry too much about. I think immigration is like these like citizenship, all that stuff. These are all just parts of the capitalist scam. They're just you know nationalist thing. They just need to know who to tax.
Mm.
I That's what it's all about. But anyways, I I don't know. I can't. This episode was about nothing, so I'm having a hard time sticking the landing
Okay,
on this.
Seinfeld.
Like, there's no way to wrap it up other than to say that we're done. Um,
We're cooked.
which yeah, well, I was gonna say like which sounds like I'm saying like guys, we're
It's
done.
done.
Like we're
It's
cooked. It's
over.
over.
Good night, nurse.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is that World War II did happen, Nazi Germany did happen, and eventually it unhappened, right? Like eventually it ended. Um, that's just not very comforting
It's
when
not.
you're in
It's
1933,
not.
right?
When you're
Like
living there, it's not.
yeah, like in 1950, looking back at it and going like, boy, that sure was a thing that happened to all of us, huh? Like that's one way to look at that perspective, and we're so far removed from it that it's easy. But like when you're when you're in the time is a flat circle loop of returning to 1933 and 2024, um and you're looking down the barrel of the next decade, I yeah, it's a little scary. I just want to watch Star Wars. That's is that like that's all that's what I want. That's all I want to do. I just want to watch Star Wars and play video games and draw silly cartoons, Joe.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a very unreasonable thing to ask, and I'm with you 1,000%.
Yeah, I think it's also just like prevalent like that's what it's what everybody wants is to just like do the things that they enjoy and spend time with the people that they love. And I don't know why it has to be so complicated.
I think
I don't
because
know what
some people
yeah.
enjoy being dicks, and that's the thing
Yeah.
that they enjoy doing, and they
Yeah.
get to do it because they have a lot of money.
Yeah. I just really wish there was something that we could do about that, you
I
know?
wish Captain America was real.
Yeah.
He would have never let
It
this shit happen.
I'll tell you, like Star Wars as an example, and the one that you just bring up, Captain America. I wish I saw a way to fix this problem that wasn't violent,
Yeah, there you go. Right?
right? And
Like,
that's not me saying that I am
no,
going to
no, I
do
understand.
anything
No,
violent.
I agree,
It means that like
100%.
like it's I am in a position of like feeling very powerless because I don't believe in violent solutions to problems, right? So being a person who doesn't believe in that, looking at this problem and going, well, really the only way out of this I see is historically using that as evidence, violent revolution, right? Like that's really the only way that you reset this. And I just feel like we have to figure out some other way to do it. I don't know. I don't know. Do you think that hugs would work?
I don't know, man. Like, I am. It's like you said. Like, it's. You don't want to look at it like violence is the solution, but like, I don't know how much of this is true, but I am of the opinion that like when you're a kid and you're growing up and you're never told no, and no other kid your age like never punched you in the head, and you just never experienced that, oh, maybe I shouldn't be an asshole to people because
Yeah.
socially that's not going to be tolerated. When people grow up not experiencing like any form of pushback or knowing what it feels like to get punched. Most people don't get punched in the head every day, right? But like that first time you get punched in the head, or you haven't been punched in the head or in the chest or where even in the arm, whatever. When it happens, you're like, whoa, this hurts a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that kind of rewires your way of thinking and how you treat people a little bit, right? Because like your whole life you're like, oh, I've never been afraid of getting punched in the head before. Now I know what it feels like, and I don't want to do anything that's going to make that happen again. So it's like I don't know that hugs are going to work on people who've never been punched in the head before, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, because I
Yeah.
I mean, you know
Yeah.
me, I am not somebody who calls for violence,
No,
but like
no. It
I've been punched in the head, so I know. Hey, don't be a
yeah.
dick to people if you don't want to get punched in the head. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, and like I think the other side of that is don't punch people in the head,
Yeah, true. Don't punch
right?
people in
Because
the head.
like
Well, no,
I think both.
there are times that punching someone in the head is I
Sure,
think
sure,
perfectly reasonable. But
but
yes, for the
don't
most part, don't
but
start by punching someone in the head.
yeah, don't seek to punch people in
Right,
the
there
head.
you
I
go.
think
Exactly.
is the way, right? I
Exactly.
think those are the two lessons there, right? Like don't behave in a way that somebody would want to punch you in the head, or that you would deserve to be punched in the head. And also don't seek to be a person who does the punching,
Mhm.
because you know what that feels like, and it sucks, right? Like it sucks to get punched in the head. So why would you want to be the person doing the punching?
Mhm.
Right? So yeah, don't live your life in a way so as to avoid both positions, right? Which is a really, really obnoxious way of
Yeah.
saying, like, don't be a dick, which is a really negative way of saying, just be nice to other people,
Yeah. Pretty
right?
simple, right? How hard I this drives me crazy. How difficult is it to just not be a dick to people?
Yeah.
Why is it
Well,
so hard for some people?
there was this one dude, and that was really kind of his whole thing. Like
Yeah.
that was his whole fucking deal. And he spent his entire adult life walking around with his friends telling everybody that idea of like
Mhm.
don't like hey like let's just like be cool to each other.
And they killed
And
him.
yeah, and they killed him for it.
So,
So I think we just answered my question. I don't think hugs are going to work. I really wish that would work. I really wish that if we could just get out there and hug some people, that maybe they'd stop trying to invalidate trans people's identities and um, round up people with a different skin color just for the simple reason of um, political ideology, because that's really what it's about. Like that's really all it's about. There's no security or like real threat there. It's like like it's happening because uh it's they've created a common enemy. And so it's like, well, now that we've created a common enemy, we have to follow through on it and do something about the common enemy. And that's how that works. And it sucks. It sucks. It all sucks. It sucks to watch injustice happening in front of you and literally be able to do nothing about it.
yeah, it's pretty lame.
Um, yeah,
Pretty frustrating.
yeah. It's very difficult when your last name is Cohen and you're like, I really need to make sure that I'm talking about this now before it comes back around to people with my last name and nose proportions again, because yeah, it it tends to bend the long arc of history tends to bend towards that. That's maybe a little bit self-serving of me to say, but it's also just a very real concern that I have on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. The world sucks right now, Joe. I really wish that there was some cool Star Wars to talk about.
Would be nice. It would be nice.
Be nice. You
We'll
hear
get
that,
there. We'll get
Lucasfilm?
some. We'll get
You
some.
hear that? Please tell us about some cool Star Wars that's going to be like fuck fascism, you know? Like well, at this point I'm wondering if they even put out a trailer for Andor, or if they're just like, if you know you know, and if you don't, we're not going to talk about it. Yeah, because I don't know, I can't imagine that season 2 of Andor has anything positive to say about fascist regimes. I just something tells me it's just a gut feeling that I have. It's gonna be fairly critical towards empires and despots.
Let's hope.
Anyways, I like I said, it's real hard to stick the landing on this one. So we're just done. We're just done. Thank you guys for listening.
We love you.
It's over. Yeah. The podcast episode, not the podcast
It's
or
over.
the world. Yeah. There's no finality. Just seems like a bad. It just seems like a bad vibe right now. So to be continued. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with our first episode talking about Andor. We're going to talk about episodes 1 through 3. If you haven't watched in a while,
Did,
then
did you guys rewatch yet? Have
it's
you
a good time.
started?
Not yet. We haven't started yet.
Okay.
We haven't started yet. Yeah. We will in the next little bit, because we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. So stick around for that. And yeah, like head over to Patreon, do all that stuff. Stay safe, keep your head on a swivel. For real, like everybody out there, please stay alert. Don't get complacent. Don't obey in advance. A piece of advice. I don't know if that's good advice, but it's advice I'm going to give nonetheless. And yeah, hopefully they just go way too far, and then it's like, okay, let's do something about this.
Yeah.
And hopefully that happens in the next little while before more people are, hurt and bad shit happens. Uh, yeah, I'll reiterate what Joe said. We love you guys. If you're listening to this, if you're part of our audience, if you've been around and hanging out with us, if you're one of those like couple hundred people, you're a part of our community, and even if we've never talked or anything like that, you matter to us. So I that's why I say stay safe, everybody. Like, pay attention to what's going on, and do what you can where you can, but yeah, be safe out there, people. That's it. Thanks for listening. See you guys next time. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.